me about 30 plus years to figure out the acting thing was not really going to work out for me. So here I am. This is my new station in life.
And this is a good place for you.
Yeah.
Well, could I give you some feedback on your new day job as a bartender? You suck. I've done all kinds of research on beer, and I know exactly when it is time for one.
I guess you'd be the man to tell us. So
that would be right now. Yeah.
What'll you have? So, Jimmy, you know, I'm the eternal researcher. I like to find esoteric material and talk about it all day.
I never knew that about you.
I read this great book. Tom Standard's is A History of the World in 6 Glasses. And it talks about all of the fluids that have influenced humankind, from beer, wine, distilled spirits, coffee, tea, and soda. I'm going for the can, too.
I've written about lots of kinds of technology in the past, and it occurred to me that drinks are a kind of technology, and they've had lots of impact on the way the world works and on how people think and on history in general. So I had this idea of writing a history of the world through drinks, but looking at the way that drinks change the course of history in the way that technology does. Beer has always been the drink that sort of brings people together. This is a thread that runs all the way through human civilization.
Beer has been around from when man evolved from the apes. And it was one of the first words ever written, and it was one of the first graphics ever. It appears in cuneiform and hieroglyphics from Mesopotamia 4,000 years before Christ.
Before that, people just drank water. I know, depressing, right?
One of the reasons that people settled down and became farmers instead of being nomadic herders and hunters and gatherers was that it would guarantee the supply of food, but it would also guarantee the supply of beer. This is something that archaeologists and sociologists have seriously proposed, the beer theory of civilization, which is the reason we're here at all and the reason we have the kind of lifestyle we do, was that originally people wanted to make sure they had enough beer.
But beer, like a lot of great inventions, was a happy mistake once human beings figured out how to grow and store grain. I know it seems obvious now, but our ancestors just weren't the brightest. The world's first cities began to form. We weren't hunter-gatherers anymore, we were farmers. And at some point, maybe as early as 10,000 BC, somebody just left some wet grain sitting around, which created a mixture of water and yeast and grain. And some guy, and you know it was a guy, no woman would just recklessly drink some weird-smelling water, but he took a sip and said, hey, this tastes pretty good. And they didn't even have any pretzels or anything like that to go with it. And, wait a minute, look at that face on Jim. I know that face. That's his Dan, you're full of it face. See, this is the moment when you need a history guy to pop in and tell everyone you're right. And I happen to know just the guy.
My name's Matthew Adams. I'm an archaeologist and an Egyptologist. I'm all about the history of beer. Well, we don't know if beer was discovered or invented, but it seems likely that it was an accidental discovery. If Neolithic people are making porridge or gruel or something like this from grain that they've harvested, mix it with water, you leave that sitting around a couple of days, and something's happening there. Hey, man, something's happening.
There would be this fermentation that, hey, smells good. Oh, it smells pretty good. Oh, looks good. Oh, tastes good. Feels good.
Feels good.
So,
once that was recognized, they deliberately manipulated that process, very quickly figured out what to do to have something like the beer that we think of today, a proper drink. The effects that beer had, changing your consciousness, altering your mind. You know, only the gods could affect your mind and your consciousness. But at the same time, drunkenness was part of a social experience. The Egyptians had a festival of drunkenness.
Before you knew it, beer drinking became a religious rite. I mean, it still is for a lot of people. One Egyptian myth tells the story of the goddess Hathor. She went on a mission to destroy the earth. But along the way, she had some beer, got a little looped, forgot all about it, and that is how she became the goddess of beer and brewing.
All around the pyramids, the workers had these microbreweries going.
Really?
Yep, and the pyramids were not built by slaves, according to some research. They were built by paid government workers, and guess what they were paid in? They were paid in beer.
Beer.
Yeah.
Beer appears in payroll departments, accounting ledgers. It's even found in one of the most ancient shopping lists. But you know how that goes. Once something emerges that's useful and fun, then the government gets involved. And pretty soon beer was taxed and beer bureaucrats popped up. Like everything fun, beer got regulated. Though in Sumer, at least they seem pretty loose there. Everyone got a government-issued ration of beer. Soldiers, policemen, workers, scribes, even women and children. It was like socialism run by a college fraternity. You know, it was all about beer.
Beer was really, really fundamental in ancient Egyptian culture. There's an old Egyptian saying that you're a bad mother if you don't send your child to school with enough beer. It was very important also in Egyptian religion, and it was sort of the lifeblood of Egyptian civilization.
Everyone was drinking beer all the time. Even though it was pretty low alcohol, they probably had at least a little buzz on for most of the day. But look, those pyramids, they're still standing. So next time you show up for work, maybe pop open a cold one. Apparently it helps.
Beer has always been a very social drink, and so you get references in these ancient texts to people coming together over beer. Then you find people using expressions like to make a beer hall, and that means to have a meeting or to have a party. And, you know, the significance of that in their society as a way of bringing people together.
Beer was liquid bread. It was more than just a drink. Beer was food. The beer that ancient people had was not highly filtered like it is today. It was full of very tiny pieces of grains and yeast and all sorts of organic compounds and very, very rich in vitamin B. When people were drinking beer, this was nutrition. It wasn't just because they're thirsty.
Archaeology guy may be right about all of that, but when you're thirsty,
There really is nothing like a cold beer.
Cold, tasty.
What is with England where they have warm beer?
Yeah, I don't
I don't
understand.
know. What do you think, George?
You know, I need more than just one sip to give you proper feedback. It's all computing right now. It's downloading.
Grab another bottle.
When we think about drinking a beer, it isn't something that you do alone. It's something that you do with your chums or your family. It's a communal, social activity. In ancient Mesopotamia, the earliest depictions of beer drinking are two people drinking with straws out of a large vessel. This is telling, I think, about this social aspect of beer. It was something that brought people together and that reinforced a sense of community and commonality.
you know how Egyptians said hello? They said bread and beer, just the way we say have a nice day. I mean, I like bread and beer a lot better, to be honest. And even back then, they'd raise a glass of beer the way we do today to wish someone good health, to toast a lost comrade, to cheer someone on. Beer is part of our collective human memory.
I remember beer from basically my mother giving it to me to go to sleep. As a child of 1 and 2 years old, she was slipping me little thimblefuls of beer.
But that's the Canadian way.
Well,
Come
of course
on.
it is. What's your first memory of beer?
Well, mine's not like as romantic as that. We were in 8th grade. We paid some guy to go in a liquor store and buy us some Colt 45. You know, we just got a little drunk. Like Colt 45, and I had a kick. Kicked our ass.
Yeah, I remember a vivid night. It was winter. We paid a guy to go and get us beer, but then we had quart-sized beer.
The quarts.
So it was 6 of us with 6 quarts, with a fire in the woods, trying to avoid the cops, and sitting there with the fire burnt down, and passing out in the snow.
I thought beer was pretty disgusting. And I remember, my dad would let me try some at the pub. And I'd think, this is horrible. Why would you want to drink this? And then there was one day, it was very, very hot. And I wanted a drink to quench my thirst. And it suddenly occurred to me that what I wanted was beer. That the bitterness that I thought I disliked was actually just what I wanted. And so I remember having a beer, and I must have been 16 or 17, and thinking, oh yes, I can see the point of this now.
You know, one of the oldest jokes in the world is about beer.
Get up.
Skeleton walks into a bar, says, give me a beer and a mop. That's one of the shortest jokes ever.
Short joke, too. Yeah.
One of my favorite things in Cheers was when Norm would come into the bar, you know, for the first time in the episode, and you'd always have a joke, you know.
Afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Nat. Sorry, Norm.
Thirsty guy walks into a bar. You finish it.
It worked the first couple of times, and then they were stuck with it. The writers had to come up with about 275 of those.
Well, that was a brilliant runner. It was like a strut of the show.
Yeah.
I mean,
I couldn't wait to see Norm's entrance.
Yeah. Tough on the writers, though.
Oh,
Very
poor
tough,
writer.
yeah. Oh, you two guys. Aw.
Hey, Mr. Peterson, what's the story?
Boy meets beer. Boy drinks beer. Boy gets another beer.
So this is what happens when you're drinking beer with a couple of friends. You just end up losing track of the thread. So, okay, back to the story of beer. We're at the part where beer gets delicious.
Beer's been around for about, we think, 10, 12,000 years, something like that. And for most of that time, it hasn't had hops in it. The two biggest things that have happened in the history of beer were the original discovery of beer and then the addition of hops, which only happened in about, we think, the 9th century.
Wait a minute. This is one of those moments in life where nobody wants to ask a question and seem dumb, so I'll be the one to say it. I had no idea what a hop actually is. People say, oh, it's the hops that make beer taste great. And I'd nod, but I've never really known what they are, or even if they are a they. I mean, is there ever just one hop? Do they always come in a bunch? So for the record, hops are the cone-shaped flowers that grow from the Cumulus ulu plant, which, to be honest, sounds like one of those Harry Potter magic spells. But inside the cone are the tiny yellow pods that are the secret to what makes beer taste amazing. They have the oils and resins that give beer its aroma and flavor. And so brewers often add them throughout the process to best capture their special qualities, and that's what a hop is. Or that's what hops are.
Today, hops is a sort of really important part of the taste of beer, but hops only came in the medieval period.
So beer started as a mistake, became a currency and an institution, and a source of nutrition and a way for people to get together. And something that great just spreads. So from Egypt to Mesopotamia, beer brewing and beer drinking spread to ancient Greece and Rome, and it kept going. By the Middle Ages, beer was everywhere. In the medieval period, it was the monks who kept culture alive. They translated manuscripts, preserved scientific documents, but maybe the most important thing they did was maintain beer-making traditions. They were also the first documented beer snobs. I mean, you know those guys, I won't drink this beer, I'll only drink that beer. Blame it on the monks.
George, you had a great career, and still do, as an actor, dramatic and comedy, and you were might I say, a living fixture at the bar in your great show, Cheers. You always had a mug in front of you,
Yeah.
or what was it?
It was non-alcoholic beer.
Non-alcoholic beer, yeah.
Our director, Jim Burrows, thought that the cast might get sluggish if it was real beer. But at the time, there wasn't any non-alcoholic beer available on tap. So they took cans of Kingsbury Brew near beer and poured it into soda pop dispensers behind the bar, of course, well before we started shooting, so it would get nice and warm and flat. And so the beer came out, and they said, we need a little head on there. It doesn't look good. So every mug on the set had a pinch of salt in it.
Oh, sure.
So it was salty, warm, flat, near beer.
And you had to tell jokes drinking that crap?
I am a genius.
Cheers was on for 11 years, which means George drank warm, salty, near beer for way too long. So maybe it's time for him to try what people call the best beer in the world.
I have a beer here I want you guys to try. This is Chimay Ale. Now, this is made by Trappist monks. It's aged 25 years.
Is that all?
And the monks take a vow of silence to make this beer.
Well, if you're drinking beer all day, I guess a while silence is a good deal for the neighbors.
Yeah.
9% alcohol, Danny.
Oh, that's a boost.
Yeah. Fermented in the bottle. Nice.
Oh, it's kind of got a Guinness blackness to it. So this is supposed to be the finest expression of beer making on the planet Earth. Ready? Here we go.
Cheers.
So the monks are still at it from the Middle Ages to today. Beer making and beer drinking are what monks are doing. I mean, among other things, I hope.
The production of beer was particularly concentrated in the hands of monks. And this was because monastic communities were striving to be self-sufficient, so they tried to make their own food and drink. They also wanted to be able to provide food and drink to visiting travelers and pilgrims. And then they realized that actually this was a quite nice little business, that you could sell beer to people. And so we now associate beer very closely with that monastic tradition in the Middle Ages. And that sort of carries beer from the ancient world into the modern period.
Every beer are special, but in Chimay Trappist beer, you can say it's the water and the yeast. They are the secret, the DNA of this beer.
2 quick points here. 1, this is considered the finest beer ever made. And 2, this is his real accent. He's not doing a bit.
We are in the Abbey Notre-Dame de Scourmont in Chimay. The Trappist monks are Catholic monks. The first Trappist beer was brewed in the 7th, 8th centuries. The beer was first brewed for hygienical reasons. It was better for the health to drink beer than water. The process of making beer since the beginning purify all the ingredients. It's better for the health.
I'm sorry.
I think I'm going to see God shortly.
Definitely better with the nuts.
Wait a second. This is supposed to be the best beer in the world, so maybe we need to give it another chance.
We recommend to consume Chimay Trappist beer in its own glass. It's a big glass with a very big opener to have a lot of flavor. Every sip of the same bottle gives you something different, complex, different aroma.
It's not too bad.
That's good stuff.
I don't know that I could pound down 2 bottles of this, but
It's very strong.
I can't get on the bike after that.
No, I'm going to get off this chair after that.
Yeah, well, that's an endorsement. That's a heavy endorsement.
All right, Jiminy.
Made by the monks, headed to Mass.
The monks were all men, obviously. And beer is often thought of as a guy's drink. With beer commercials all over the world, it's guys drinking together, clinking glasses, having fun. But like a lot of things, it was often women doing the real work. Guys kicking back, women hard at work. Not much has changed.
Traditionally, in the Middle Ages, brewing would have been very much a cottage industry, and you had a term called brewsters, and these were the women who were brewing beer.
Women typically have better palates, so are better at tasting beer, so therefore probably produce much better beer as a result.
Now, when you think of Ireland, you think of St. Patrick. But it was another saint, St. Bridget of Kildare. She died in the year 525, who helped turn Ireland into a beer-loving nation.
So St. Bridget is, of course, one of Ireland's most famous saints, and she has a really, really important role in Irish beer history. My favorite story of St. Bridget comes from an 11th century poem called St. Bridget's Ale Feast, where she tells us that heaven is a giant lake of beer that everyone can drink for all eternity, which sounds rather nice to me.
Here's the problem with beer. It's got fizz. So the moment you open a beer, you pretty much have to drink all of it, whether it's a can or a bottle or a barrel. But that's also what's great about beer. You pretty much have to drink all of it. And there's nothing worse than flat beer. So drink up.
When it was first discovered or created, you couldn't store it for long periods, so you might as well drink all the beer you had. Whereas wine had to be fermented over quite a long period, and so you had to have pottery to make it, and that meant that you could drink a little bit of it, and then you could stop up your bottle and come back later. So there's always been this difference, which is that wine is associated with moderate consumption of alcohol, with meals, and is sort of more civilized, whereas beer is about, oh, here's all the beer, let's drink all the beer, and then fall over.
Beer comes in all sorts of ways, in cans and bottles of all different shapes. So, which one tastes better?
So, George, you consider yourself, a beer expert, right? A connoisseur of beer?
I wouldn't go that far.
Huh?
No, I'm an enjoyer of beer.
You prefer beer on tap, the bottle, or the can?
I would say on tap, then bottle, then cans.
I'd say that's about right.
Wait, what? Why don't you tell me you can tell the difference between a bottled beer and a can of beer?
Oh,
Jimmy, please.
Absolutely.
Not a
Hey,
cent.
there's no way. I'm going to call BS on that. There's no way you can tell that difference.
Oh, well, let's just see.
Yeah, let's just see. I want to see a beer in a bottle and a beer in a can and see if you guys can tell the difference.
Okay. Yeah, all right. All right.
All right.
I'm going to use the old church key here.
Okay.
And we'll pour. Okay. Ready, George?
I'm mixing them up.
All right.
Try that one, Danny.
This one?
Yep. Hold on, George. You're next. What's that one?
Oh, that's a bottle.
Bottle for sure, right? All right. Try this one.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Definitely a can.
George?
Okay. This is a beer. Bottle.
Bottle. All right. Let me switch it with this one. Try that one.
Yeah. That is a can.
Gentlemen, this was the same beer you drank twice at the same time. These are the same beer.
That's not the way a taste test is supposed to work.
I did it the way it works. You tasted this twice and you called it two different things. You tasted this twice and you called it two different things.
Well, I know the difference in my own mind.
You're a pirate, are you now?
You're a deceiver.
I'm a deceiver.
Awful.
All right.
Jimmy,
Here we go. Cheers.
the louder you get, the righter you are.
Please ignore the words of this so-called expert. I know I can tell the difference.
Served blind, bottles and cans, they've passed no detectable difference over and over. Can a can or a bottle affect the taste of beer? Absolutely. The proper way is to pour into a glass. But if you pour into a nice glass, you're going to see it. And you really drink with your eyes first.
This is my third favorite sound. Okay, this sound right here. My first is the sound of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. And the second is a martini shaker. And here.
Cheers. Beauty.
Ooh, I love. And as we do in the South, you're working outside on the asphalt spreader.
Oh, baby, I need that. Cool me down. Cool me down.
Beautiful.
Okay, so to recap, beer starts in Egypt, goes to Europe, gets improved by the monks, is brewed by the women, and eventually it ends up all over the world. Every country has its own local brew that people drink after work with friends hanging out. And eventually, of course, it comes to the New World, where it helps build a country.
So the history of beer in America is pretty crazy. I mean, first of all, most of us of European descent wouldn't even have made it here without beer. Beer helped us survive for generations.
When the Mayflower set out in 1620, they were aiming for the Hudson River, but they ended up, because of bad weather, at Cape Cod. They wanted to go to their original destination, but the crew was like, no, you have to get out here, because otherwise we're not going to have enough beer for the return journey across the Atlantic. The lack of beer ended up determining where that colony was founded. In the 19th century, immigration to America, you get a lot more people coming from Northern Europe, from Germany, from Sweden. These are beer drinking cultures. And so beer becomes even more important in American culture.
I mean, you think about the American presidents who have loved and brewed beer, from George Washington brewing porters at Mount Vernon, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, even all the way to Barack Obama, who brewed beer at the White House and even hosted a beer summit. Really, the modern beer movement came in the 1840s and 1850s. Several German immigrants came over and they brought yeast in their pocket and they started to brew their lagers here in America.
America is an entrepreneurial business kind of country. So it wasn't long before some enterprising character decided to start a commercial brewery. Exactly who that was and who got there first is somewhat murky. But it was probably the Yangling Brewery in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. At least, to hear them tell it.
So we have been here for 193 years, not we, the two of us. Our company is. We were founded in 1829 by our great-great-great-grandfather, who was an immigrant from Germany. In those days, in the 1800s and probably going into the early 1900s, every small town in this area, they all had their own little breweries that serviced just the local people. And I think primarily it was the miners, the working class folks. As time went on and more mainstream and national brewers came on site, more transportation across the country, a lot of those smaller brewers started to either just die out, or they consolidated, or they got bought out.
His brewery is growing so fast that if we don't grow to meet it, it's going to grow to meet us.
Think about the folks that came over on the ships. They could only drink beer to survive because they didn't have clean water. Then you get here and you had generations of folks that were brewing at home or had small local breweries. And from there, there's different waves of immigrants that came. So when you think about Irish, Scottish, English, German immigrants, all these are beer-loving countries, right? And so all those folks came here and they love beer. So you've got this huge base for beer already.
I have a beautiful demonstration for you.
Okay.
Because we had someone come from probably the greatest brand in the world, Guinness, to show me how to actually pour a Guinness beer.
Smooth draft Guinness. Creamy draft Guinness. So enjoy draft Guinness where you see this sign.
I am very bad on these other taps. I don't know how to do it. The foam's not right. The head's not right. It's weak. I do everything that they tell me to do. But here, somehow, with proper instruction, I think you'll be surprised at how well I pour a Guinness. So I'm going to talk a bit about the history of the brand, and then I'll pour us this delicious, thick, wonderful, foamy beer.
I wonder maybe we could flip the order there, and have the beer first and then talk.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, how about this? We'll pour and talk at the same time. Now, Guinness was the first beer ever sold in the United States.
Can you pour while you're talking,
Yes.
Danny?
And the proper technique is to pour this part of it first. And you'll see there's three colors here. There's black, brown, and white. Now, we have to wait until the black goes all the way up to the top, and it's just black and white. And then there's a second stage to the pour. Yeah,
it's alive.
When I had Ron Wood and Keith Richards at the farm up in Canada. Yes, that would be the Rolling Stones. I didn't have a pour machine. I didn't have kegs of Guinness, so I had to go to all of the beer stores in the whole region and buy every can of Guinness they had, because I knew the boys, that's all they drank, and they had a whole crew with them. And so it was cold Guinness the entire weekend. So there, it's nice and black, and we see the foam there is white, and we go to the second phase, and the foam should puff right up right to the edge of the rim so that a gentleman with a mustache gets a little, in the hairs of your tonsure there. That's for you, yes.
Oh, my God. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and I'll get... all
right.
Where's for Jimmy? Handle goes all the way down, 45-degree angle.
I don't have patience for this. When I was in Ireland, I was shooting a movie there. We went to the pubs, and it just took forever to get a...
Well, that Guinness is worth waiting for, bro.
Oh, it was. It's delicious.
All right, and there, I'm going to let that sit, and again, we'll wait for the colors
look at that. I just think that looks so cool.
Yeah.
It is cool.
That's great.
You're going to pour yourself one, Danny?
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand pushing it forward. What's that all about?
Push it forward for the main pour and then push it back for the foam here. So I'll do that like that. Oh, you see it comes out a little different way there. I bring it to the top.
And James Joyce, of course, referred to the particular odor around Guinness Brewery in St. James Gate. The air smelled of roasted farts.
Roasted farts.
That's from the roasted body.
I say we quaff, gentlemen.
Yes.
Aaron Gobra. Oh.
Lovely.
You can't talk about beer without talking about bars, because that's where people go to have a cold one and socialize. Beer is a communal drink. Even making a toast, clinking a beer mug is something that goes back to ancient times. You did it to show friendship and trust. See, a little of your beer would spill into the other mug, and a little of that beer would spill into yours, so you knew no one was poisoning anyone. Beer has been a peacemaker since the very beginning, and the bar has been the place where that peace is made.
Beer is a very social drink. It's also the honest drink of the working man. And so there's this great tradition that beer is the sort of no-nonsense drink that helps people relax at the end of the day.
Beer is the heart of the community. It's ingrained into our society, and beer is part of celebration. Beer is part of commiseration.
The term public house first appears in England sometime in the 17th century.
A pub 100 years ago wasn't just a pub selling beer. It was also where you did your groceries. It was also the hardware store. It was also the local leather store, often the local undertakers. So pubs developed throughout the 1800s as a really important social hub.
The overall effect of alcohol on society, I think, is a sort of reduction of friction, right? It helps things move along a bit better in social context. Of course, that can go too far, and that can lead to violence, and it can lead to bad behaviour. But by and large, it's to sort of relax people, to help life flow a bit more easily. And I think that's the function it's always had and still has today.
And beer has always been seen as a solid, upstanding drink. In 1751, for instance, English artist William Hogarth made 2 prints, which he wanted people to look at side by side. In the first, he depicted something he called Gin Lane, where everyone is drunk on gin and they're sick and broke. And as you can see, not great about parenting. And next to it, Beer Street, where everyone is healthy, happy, and productive. The message is simple. Beer is good for you. Beer is good for society. Well, not everyone got that message. In the late 19th and early 20th century, there was a large temperance movement in America. It was mostly focused on liquor, but beer got swept up into it too. Before you knew it, the country that was built on beer was shutting down breweries and bars. Prohibition, the Volstead Act, the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, became law in January 1919. But here's the truth. People still found a way to have a beer. Americans always find a way.
June 13th, 1933. Elliot Ness and his Untouchables raid a warehouse, finding the biggest illegal brewery.
Lee, Rico, Youngblood, bring it around by the back. Remember? Well, with Robert Stack. So the illegal beer, that was all that Prohibition really was in Chicago, was that illegal beer.
Yeah, but what was that beer?
Well, they called it green beer.
Why green?
Because they were making so much of it that they got to the point where they couldn't brew it properly and give it enough time. So they would just, get it made quickly and send it out the door.
Oh, so it was premature beer.
The worst part about Prohibition was that the places where people got together, the public spaces, all closed. Well, I guess the worst part was that it created organized crime and violent gang warfare. But the second worst part was you couldn't get together with your friends and share a cold one.
So during Prohibition, obviously those were incredibly difficult times for brewers in America. Literally went from thousands across the country down to just a few dozen. Ultimately, they had to find different ways to survive. So many of them made malted milk products, made near beers, did a whole host of things. And Miller, in fact, actually created this inn where folks could stay and come and visit.
We were able to survive Prohibition in large thanks to the 3rd generation owner at the time, who was Frank Yingling. Where we're sitting right now is the old dairy or ice cream factory. So once Prohibition was enacted, not only did he make near beer in the brewery to keep his workers employed, which was 1/2 of 1% alcohol, was legal, but he also backed that up by making ice cream here in the dairy for local distribution.
They had to keep the dream alive. I mean, they had to survive. They had to be ready to thrive the day that it ended, 1933, and they had to be ready to go so that people could get back to that love for beer.
Well, after Prohibition, there was actually a national celebration that beer was back, but that did not necessarily translate into massive sales. The 30s, middle of the Great Depression, it was a difficult time for an industry like beer, whose product was seen somewhat of a luxury.
I got something else really cool to show you.
Yeah? Does that come with a beer also?
Yes, it does.
I'm ready.
All right, this is really neat. I'm sure you guys have never seen this before. Maybe, George, you have. Beautiful machine. It's not a cannabis infusion machine.
Oh.
But here is what it does. All right, we place the beer here like this. Okay. I'm gonna do the master of beer first. Shocked.
Beat me up.
What is that? Like an Irish jig or something? What?
And we have a portrait of George. What? What? Who
that,
my God.
I am
Wow.
Instagramming this.
I mean, really, how much Guinness do you have to sell to get one of these in your bar?
I don't know.
And who is it? Oh, it's the Albanian Illinois Alpha Male. All right.
Look at that.
All right.
You got that? I gotta
And
try
here
that.
is the Lonely Canadian coming up. It's having a hard time with mine.
Whoa,
There he is. Wow.
Lovely.
Oh, man, I want this for my passport photo.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Foam takes about 20 years off of it.
Yeah, and about 10 pounds, too.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we...
Yes. Okay, I'm going to drink.
We,
Let's drink our faces.
drink our faces off. Wow. Still there?
You drank half your
Well,
face.
I did take half my face off.
That's good.
I'm going to take my double chin off now.
After World War II, the beer industry grew exponentially. You could buy a Budweiser or a Miller pretty much anywhere in America, and brands were making beer and shipping it everywhere. Beer got very, very big. But it's not just the big guys. Little breweries have been popping up everywhere. Microbrewers, they call them. Beer is still really big, but it's also really small.
The rise of microbreweries, I think, is a sort of backlash against mass-produced, big beer brands that are kind of boring. People started to say, well, we could make more interesting beer in smaller quantities, and this led to an explosion of microbreweries. Beer used to be made locally, and if you went into a tavern, they'd make their own beer and so on. I like to think of the microbrewery as a sort of return to the roots of the way beer used to be.
So beer got large with multinational breweries and international brands. And it got small with microbrews and local bottles. And it also got weird. There's some very weird beer out there.
What is this thing? It's reading. It says cream of broccoli double dry.
Gotta try it.
Come on. Try it.
Whoa. It's kind of like a, I don't know. It smells kind of interesting. It's sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really,
The great thing about beer is you can make it everywhere, and so there's just a whole explosion of interesting beer happening, and wherever you go in the world, you can find the local beer and try it out, and it's a great adventure.
I think that craft beer can be such an amazing thing to get people involved in something that they can access, they can take part in, they can brew themselves.
There's a kind of increasing trend in the United Kingdom as people are experimenting with different beers. They might be trying slightly fruitier beers, so they might have grapefruit in it or peach in it.
One of the biggest things with craft beer over the last decade has been just the overall culture of it. It's driven by real enthusiasts.
I think especially look at craft beer, it embodies Americanism. It embodies this drive for exceptionalism. It embodies this idea that we're not content with the status quo and that we want to keep moving and evolving and changing. And that is craft beer.
It's a very unpretentious drink. People have tried to make it a bit more pretentious, but basically it's good time, honest, straightforward, have this and relax and you're not working anymore. That's the ethos we have with it.
It's incredible. The minute our ancestors got their act together and learned how to grow stuff, they made grain and a place to store it. And then some brilliant idiot made a mistake. And suddenly we had this delicious drink of water and hops and yeast, which meant we had something to drink after a hard day's work. So, every time we open a bottle or a can to relax with friends, we're connecting to an unbroken chain of soldiers on leave, monks in the abbey, goths and Visigoths and gangsters, and the local bar around the corner. The world may change, sometimes not for the better, but thank God we've got beer to see us through, which is something people have been saying for thousands of years.
I think you can argue that civilization is sort of founded on beer. It's there right at the start, may have even helped get civilization going. And today I can still drink it in the sort of modern high-tech world where we live. Beer is just a constant. The values associated with it, that it has this magical power of helping people relax and bringing them together, and those are absolute constants throughout thousands of years of history.
Well, here's mud in your eye. That's a toast.
Yeah. Kizwara.
That's Albanian?
Yes.
Prost.
Slancha.
Slancha.
Salute.
Salute. Abbondanza.
Centani.
Centani. L'chaim. And cheers.
Cheers.